Before we start the video, a large thank you to Loic and Guybrush for the support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And a massive thank you to Halo Burner for their immense support to the channel on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to add charging attacks to the project and regular heavy attacks. But before we do that, I'm going to clean up the project here and put all of these things in the folders they should be in. So I'm going to make a new folder called utility and put that utility scripts in there. I'm going to put these world managers in the world managers folder. I'm going to create a new sound effects folder in art and put these sound effects in there. Just doing this on camera so you guys know where I'm putting everything. Likewise, I'm going to go to the prefabs folder, make another new folder. I'm going to call it visual effects or visual FX and put in the blood splat. Alright, so we're good to go. Now, let's start by opening up the player controls. What we're going to do is make two new inputs, and I'm going to explain why. So first, let's duplicate the RB input and call it RT, and I'm going to make it the right trigger on the controller. This is going to be for the heavy attack. And then I'm going to duplicate this again, but I'm going to call it hold or charge RT, whatever makes the most sense to you. So it could be charging, holding, hold, charge, I'm going to call mine hold, whatever makes most sense to you. I'm going to make it use the right trigger again, but it's not going to be a button. It's going to be a pass-through because we're going to hold it. And on the interactions, we're also going to add a hold interaction. And I'm just going to set the press point to 0.1 so it triggers right away. And then I'm going to save this and we're good to go. Now, before I get into how we're going to set this up, let me explain something using this little chart here. So we have a chart here where you press RT, and after that you're going to enter the charge animation state. So the charge attack, it's kind of the point where you draw back the weapon. Now if you release RT immediately, so if you just tap RT and let go, you're going to perform a regular heavy attack, okay? But if you're holding RT at the point you enter the charge state, if you hold it right until the charge state finishes, then you will play a charged attack. I just wanted to show this here to really illustrate what we're going to do. Now the reason why we're having two inputs here, or why I like to do it, is because I'm only going to check for the holding input if we're performing an action. We can use this in the future for other actions too that require a hold input. So it could be a special weapon art or it could be some kind of spell. But for that reason, I'm only using it during the is performing an action state, or flag rather. But you can do this however you want. But this is why I like using two separate input flags. Alright, let's head over to the player input manager now. And let's open that up and let's actually create some flags for these new inputs. So I'm going to make a header for my right bumper and a header for my triggers. So I'm going to start by making the header for the triggers here. I'm just going to say trigger inputs, and then I'm going to make another one too for the bumper inputs. And I'm just going to move the right bumper down into that one. Just as we add more, I want to keep it more organized. So if I'm quickly looking for an input section, I can find it as easy as possible. So I'm going to paste the RB input and call it RT input. And then I'm going to copy and paste the RB input again and just call it hold_RT. So let's go to on enable and let's set this up like we've done before, probably a dozen times now. Let's copy the RB input. Let's change it to RT. And then let's change that to RT input is equal to true. Now, you can see in the past we've used one also where we cancel it. We're going to use that again. So we're going to make sure that we set hold RT to true when we're performing hold RT, but likewise, when we cancel the button, so it's using a hold triggers when we let go of it, we're also going to change hold RT to false. So we're always keeping track of when we're holding or not holding RT, but we're only going to use this bit of the logic when we're performing a charge attack, for example, right now. In the future, we can use it for other things, but right now that's the only time it's ever actually being used. So again, I'm going to make a little comment here for triggers and make a comment here for bumpers just to keep this as organized as possible so it's really easy to see everything at first glance. Now I'm going to come down right to the bottom and I'm going to create a new private void for handle RT input. And then I'm going to basically copy everything inside RB input because it's literally pretty much identical, except instead of referencing RB, we're referencing RT. This is still making you do a right-handed action. And instead of referencing the right bumper action, we're referencing the right trigger action, which doesn't exist yet. So we're going to make that in a moment, but before we do, let's copy this function again and paste it. Let's change handle RT input to handle charge RT input, or hold, whatever you prefer. I'm going to erase everything inside of it. And then I'm going to say if the player is performing an action, then we want to run some logic. Now, why am I doing this? Like I said before, we're only checking for this when we're doing an action that can charge. So it could be charged attack or a charged spell or a charged weapon art, whatever you want to use it for, but we're only checking for this charge input if we're actually already in an action. Otherwise, we don't need to. So if we are performing an action, what's the next step? Well, we're going to see if the player is using the right hand, because this is RT, so that means it has to be right hand, or if you're two-handing the left-handed weapon. So we're going to say player.playerNetworkManager is using right hand.value. And then we're going to run some logic again. What do we do here? Well, all we would do, I'm going to comment this out because the variable doesn't exist yet. We're going to say player.playerNetworkManager.isChargingAttack.value is equal to true. Now, why is this a network variable? Well, another character has to know when you're charging an attack if you're playing the same game as them, because it has to update their animator accordingly. And I'll show you why and how in just a bit. But just know that this has to be a network variable if you want to see when other people are charging attacks. Otherwise, the animation state will play incorrectly. Now, let's go down to handle all inputs, and let's just call handle RT input and then handle charge RT input. And we're good to go. So I'm going to come over here now, and you can see this is not a variable, so let's make that right now. Let's go to weapon item, and let's scroll down, and right here under actions, we can copy and paste one-handed RB, change it to one-handed RT, and that's it. Now we actually have to make the action. So I'm going to say in the comment here, one hand right trigger action. Okay, so now we actually have to make the heavy attack action. So let's go over into our weapon actions, and let's actually create a new script. I'm going to call it heavy attack action, because this won't be just charge attack in the future. You're also going to be able to do your heavy runnings and rollings and stuff from this as well, and your backstep, etc., etc. So let's go back now to the handle inputs, because I made a mistake. I should be handle RT, not handle RB twice. Let's go to the light attack weapon action and copy everything inside of it. And then if we go over now to our newly created script, we can delete the start and update. We can drop in our namespace as is per tradition. We can make this derive from the weapon action class, weapon item action, and then paste this in here. So what do we change? Well, we're not going to be performing a light attack, so let's rename that to heavy attack 01. Likewise, we're going to change the default string to main heavy attack 01. And we're going to change basically wherever it says light to heavy. And the only other thing we need to change is the attack type. And we're pretty much good to go, because it's going to perform identical from this part. So let's say attack type is equal to heavy attack 01. We don't have that made yet, so let's jump to the enums. I'm going to make a comment here just so it's clear what this does. This is used to calculate damage based on attack type. Now, of course, we already know that because we set that up, but just have a comment there so it's clear. I like commenting everything as much as possible. And while I'm here, I'll put in light attack 02 because we're going to do a combo soon. And I'm going to put in heavy attack 01, and I'm going to save that. So let's go back, and the attack type is now heavy attack 01. Cool. Awesome. Everything in here looks good. We can again change this default string, because I forgot to do that just now. So main underscore heavy attack 01 is now the default string value of this heavy attack weapon item action. Now we need to be able to create this in the game, so we got to add our create asset menu. I'm going to change light to heavy, so character actions / weapon actions / heavy attack action. Now let's go to data weapon actions and let's create that by right clicking create character actions weapon actions heavy attack action. Now let's just make sure the default values are correct. Yes, they are. Main underscore heavy attack 01. Let's also add it to our world action manager, so it gets a unique ID in the future. And then let's go over to our animator and let's set up the state. Now, if you're not using the animations that I have on our asset shop, you can just find any old heavy attack animation and chop it into 3 pieces. What do you need? You need the charge, which is the first portion of the attack. Here you can see I'm drawing the weapon back. Then you need the hold, which is the portion that you want to have before you actually release the charge. So it looks like this. You kind of go deeper into the stance a bit. And then finally, you have the release, and I have release full, which is just release, but it moves you a little bit further forward to give you that sense of oomph. So you can see here's the regular release, and then you can go to release full, and you can see it puts you a little bit further ahead. So again, you can chop up any regular animation and make it kind of behave like this, any attack animation. But if you have this set, then this is the ones you want to drag in. So we have release full, release, hold, and charge. So hold is going to be the midpoint. So we'll call that main underscore heavy underscore attack underscore hold. and I'm going to say, or we'll say attack 01 underscore hold. And then we're going to go to the charge, which is actually what we're going to start. So we're just going to call that main underscore heavy underscore attack 01 because this is the first point that you entered the animation sequence. So then let's make a transition from the start into the hold, and we're going to make the exit time 0 and the transition, the exit time 1 and the transition 0. And you can see that'll perfectly align with the animations because they're made to go together, so you don't need to blend them together. Blending it would kind of look weird and would take away from the oomph factor. Next, let's go to the releases, and let's call the regular release main underscore heavy attack 01 release. And then I'm going to call the full release main underscore heavy attack 01 underscore F release, as in full. Okay, so now we need to know if we're fully charging an attack. So let's add a new parameter to the animator called isChargingAttack, and it's the form of a bool. And then we can make our two transition arrows connect from the hold to both the release and the full release. Now let's start with the release animation. What do we want to do? Well, we want to lead this immediately if we're not charging an attack. So to do that, we untick has exit time, and we make the transition duration 0.1 so it blends a bit nicely because it's going to be a sudden abrupt leave. And then under conditions, we say is charging attack is false. So if that's false when you enter the state, it will immediately leave the hold state into the release state. Now, the opposite down here under full release, we want to keep has exit time ticked. We don't want to blend the animation. We want to add a condition for is charging attack is true. Now let's make these animations go back to the empty state. And what's going to happen here is if you're holding the right trigger when you enter that hold state for the entirety of the animation, you will exit to the full release. If you let go of it before the animation ends, you will exit to the partial release, so you'll perform a regular heavy attack. Okay, so now let's go to our straight sword weapon, and let's actually add in the heavy attack under the new item action. So one-handed RT action is going to be the heavy attack. Cool. Now, I'm going to go over into the player input manager, the player network manager, and we're going to add a new flag. Now you can put this on the network manager on the player or the character. If you want characters, AI characters, to be able to utilize this too, you might want to put it there. So we'll put it there for now, but that's up to you. You're going to make an executive decision. I'm going to say here is charging attack under the flags. And again, this is under the character network manager. And then we're going to make a on is charging attack changed function. And we're going to use this using on value changed when that bool changes. So we're going to have to add a bool old status and bool new status. It just requires that. Now, what we're going to do is set the animator is charging attack status to whatever the status is of this network variable. So we're going to say character.animator.setBool, copy the exact wording of this. So is charging attack, Control C, and then Control V. Now you could just use new status, which will be the updated status of the bool, or you could even just say is charging attack dot value, and it will just directly reference it anyway. Both will give you the same outcome. So I'm then going to call this on network object spawn. So let's go to the player manager and open that up. Player manager. And now down here on network spawn, I guess I kind of need to make a new little comment for this. This is technically a flag, which we don't have. So I'm going to do that, / make a comment flags, and we'll have a couple more of these in the future. I guess is locked on is technically a flag. Now I'm going to say player network manager dot is charging attack dot on value changed. Then we're going to say plus equals player network manager dot on is charging attack changed. Okay, cool. Now we're going to call upon on network despawn. We want to make sure we're unsubscribing from all of these events when the network object gets deleted or removed from the game. This is to make sure you don't get a memory leak, essentially. You want to make sure you're unsubscribing to any events you have subscribed to before you destroy the object. So let's call upon on network despawn, and this is very simple. You just copy every line of code here that we've used to subscribe to one of these events, and instead of saying plus equals, you just say minus equals. So in the future, whenever you're adding new little calls like this, make sure you come to on network despawn and make sure you're uncalling them before the object gets deleted from the scene. So you can delete all the references here and just keep anything that has a plus equals sign and change it to a minus equals sign, and that's it. So I'm just going to go down to this list here now and just do all of these while I'm here. And in the future now, when we add any new ones, we're going to come here instantly also and just do this. It's a good practice to do it right away. All right, so let's save that now. And we're almost good to go. We just got to do a couple more things. We got to jump back over to the player input manager, and we got to make sure we're actually changing that network variable. So here we go. On comment out this if you do the same thing as me. So player.playerNetworkManager.isChargingAttack.value equals charging RT. You can see here if I press RT and release, we do a regular attack, and if I hold it, we do a fully charged attack. And just so you can for sure see what's going on, I'm going to drag the animator component here to the side, and we can actually watch the transitions happen. So I'm just going to, again, tap RT. I'm going to select the player, so it's actually the player's animator. Tap RT, you can see it's going to go from hold to release. Now I'm going to hold RT, you can see it's going from hold, it's waiting, and then goes to full release. Cool, working as intended. Okay, so now we have to add the events, the animation events, to our animation file. So we can just actually copy them from the light attack, which we've already set up. So again, we need to drain stamina and open and close damage collider. So I like draining the stamina at the same time that I open the damage collider, because it doesn't feel good if you lose stamina and you get canceled out of the attack by someone else attacking you and your attack doesn't even go off. So I do that. I put them on the same frame. Just find the frame that it opens up here. I think around frame 1 looks good. And then you can close it after like 4 or 5 or even 6 frames if you want. You know, you got to be the judge of that. However you want the game to feel, more forgiving or less forgiving, more accurate or less accurate. And after that's done, just save it. And then do the same thing for the full release animation. And just kind of set them up how you want them. The animation is very close to the same at the start, but it's going to launch you a bit further and kind of just propel you more forward. Okay, so now that's good. We can save that. And if I go to the game here, I'm actually going to fix the lock-on camera, because 0.2 for lock-on target speed is a bit too fast. It can be like a jarring, abrupt change. If I set it to 1, though, it's a lot more smooth. So if you guys copy my settings from the last video, you might want to change that. So if I attack this dummy, I'm doing regular damage with the light attack. That's cool. But if I were to perform a heavy attack on this dummy, it actually doesn't change the damage. It's actually less, as you can see here. Now, why is that? I'm sure some of you know. We're not actually modifying the base damage based on our heavy attack. We do it based on our light attack, but we don't ever do it based on our heavy attack. So let's go to apply attack damage modifiers here on damage target. And this is under the melee weapon damage collider script. And let's add a new case for heavy attack 01. And what we want to do is reference heavy attack 01 modifier, which doesn't exist yet on our damage collider because we haven't made it. So let's scroll up and make that. So weapon attack modifiers, again, melee weapon damage collider. Remember, we get these from the weapon when we spawn it in. So let's make a heavy attack 01 modifier. And while we're here too, we can also make a public float. And we can say a charged attack 01 modifier. So again, when you put the weapon in your hand, it gets these modifiers from your weapon item object when you actually spawn the weapon into your hand. So let's go over now into the enums, and let's add a charged attack 01 attack type and a charged attack 02 attack type. While we're here, might as well. And let's go back to the melee weapon damage collider, and let's make a new case here for the charged attack 01 as well. And let's change that from a heavy attack 01 modifier to a charged attack 01 modifier. Okay, cool. So now all we got to do for this to work is just make these modifiers in our weapon and pass them along. So to see where we pass them along, let's go to find, and let's track the melee or the light attack 01 modifier. You can see we're doing that under set weapon damage under the weapon manager. So let's go there. Now we're going to say melee damage collider dot heavy attack 01 modifier equals weapon dot heavy attack 01 modifier, which doesn't exist yet. So again, this is under set damage under the weapon manager. And likewise, melee damage collider dot charge attack 01 modifier is equal to weapon dot charge attack 01 modifier, which also doesn't exist yet. So let's go make those. And they exist or will exist on the weapon item script. So let's go over to our attack modifiers. You can see we actually got a comment here, heavy attack modifier. Cool, let's erase the comment and actually make the code. So copy and paste the light attack modifier, change it to heavy attack 01 modifier, and set the value that you think is right for your game. I'm going to say 1.4, and then I'm going to make a charge attack 01 modifier, and I'm going to say 2.0. So you can see heavy to light is a bit of an increase, but then charge from heavy is a further increase. So now by a light attack, it's 130 damage, and a heavy attack is 165 damage. But now if I charge it, nothing happens. So this is because obviously we're still under the attack type heavy attack. So there's a couple ways to change this. I'm going to show you my favorite. You know this reset action flag thing on the animator here that changes some bools when we enter this empty state. Let's actually drag that into the Animator scripts folder because that's where it should be. But we're going to utilize the same principle here. We're going to create a new script under the full release animation state. I'm going to call it toggle charged attack. I'm going to create and add that script. And actually, now I'm thinking about it, we could use this for any attack type. So we could just say, let's rename this to toggle attack type. Now, instead of using this on the empty state, we're using it on this specific animation state, the heavy attack full charge animation state. And we're going to utilize on state enter again. You can see this is called when a transition starts and the state machine starts to evaluate this state. So whenever it enters this specific state, it's going to start. Let's drop in our namespace and let's make a character manager variable. And let's call it character. We're going to say if character equals null, character equals animator.getComponent character manager, because the character manager is on the same game object as the animator is on your character. Okay, and then we're going to say character.character combat manager dot, I think it's called current attack type. Current attack type is equal to, and let's make a variable for this. Let's make a serializable field so we can change it in the inspector. And let's call this variable attack type. And we're going to set the current attack type of the character combat manager to whatever this variable is. Now, I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. We can change this to, or set this variable to a charge attack 01, because this is the heavy attack 01, so it should be charge attack 01, not 02. And now, by the time the damage clotter opens, your current attack will be charge attack 01. So now light attack's working, heavy attack's working, and now the fully charged attack should do, yes, 236 damage. So you can see light, heavy, and charged all have their working respective damage types. There you go, guys. If you learned something new, I would greatly appreciate a like and comment because it genuinely helps out this series so much. Thank you for joining me again, guys. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you next week when we do weapon combos. And then just after that, we're going to quickly make some logic to switch our weapons easier so not always having to go to that debug message in the player manager. And then after that, we're going to start our enemy AI. At least that is the plan as of right now. Alright guys, once again, thank you for joining me. Have a lovely weekend. I'll see you all next week.